Hello, I welcome you again to another episode of the Islamic Dilemma show. In our previous episode, myself and my distinguished guest here, Bill Warner. Bill, how are you?
Good, good.
We talked about a very sensitive topic relating to the status of women, and basically we showed example from the Qur'an that women, and specifically married women in particular, are not basically protected or even considered to be equal in status with men. Today, we are going to continue along the same line of discussion, and the hope is to cover additional passages and verses found in the Quran to prove one point. Islam did not improve the status of women, period. Isn't that the truth, Bill?
Well, if it did improve their status with what we see now, I pity them for what they had before. But this is very strange because we know from the Sirah, Khadijah was an independent businesswoman. She proposed marriage to Muhammad. And so when you look at what we have in the status of women that came after Khadijah, it's not clear to me that they improved her status at all.
And Khadijah, of course, is Muhammad's very first wife.
Yes.
She actually proposed marriage to him.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact.
Exactly.
So that's something that goes completely against at least the understanding of the marriage proposal under Islamic teaching and the culture. Last time we finished by our discussion talking about divorce and remarriage, and we mentioned something to the extent that in chapter 2, verse 230 of the Quran, if a woman is to remarry her husband who divorced her 3 times, then there is an unfortunate condition that has to take place, and that's the fact that she must now marry another man, sleep with this man, then that man must divorce her, and then when that happens, she can freely go back now to her previous husband. Now we want to talk about what happened usually after a husband divorces his wife, whether once, twice, or 3 times, whether he wants to bring her back or at least someone else wants to marry her. There is what is called the prescribed period of waiting, basically. Apparently, the Quran stated that a woman must wait for a period of time. Originally, it was waiting for a whole year to remarry, and then Muhammad basically abrogated that and came up with a period of 40 days or at least 3 months. 3 months basically to wait after divorce before they are allowed to remarry. I have in front of us here on the screen the passage, or one of the many passages in the Quran, but this is a very important passage for some obvious reason that we're going to point out right now. It is found in chapter 65, verse 4. This is what it says: "As for you women who have despaired of further ministrating," and we apologize for this kind of language, but we're trying to share at least the teachings of Islam. After basically they have went through their monthly period for a period of 3 months, as we mentioned, then they are allowed to marry. But then Islam gives us the description of who are these women. It gives us certain status of these women, categories if you wish. One of them will be just a woman who just was married and got divorced, and she's waiting to get remarried again. Another status has to do with women maybe who do not have the period anymore. They're past that stage. They still need to wait for 3 months.
Right.
But then I underlined a very troubling passage. It says, "and those who have not menstruated as yet." Bill, do you know what it's talking about?
We're talking about children.
We're talking about children,
yes.
Exactly. Young women who have yet to reach the age of puberty.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, this is not unique in terms of its teaching, because the Prophet of Islam have actually did something similar by proposing to a young girl. She was 6 years old.
6 years old.
And married her when she was 9. He was in his 50s at that time. And she is the daughter of his close friend Abu Bakr.
Exactly.
Her name is Aisha. And we
she
did
was
talk
one of
about
his
Aisha before, that she's one of his favorite wives, basically. So what Islam is teaching us here, that not only women have no respect whatsoever in terms of treating them as human beings, we are talking about what we call child pornography here in civilized countries. Because if you are caught as a male with a woman in many laws under a certain age, let's say 18 or 17 or whatever the age might be under that specific law, you can be in a world of trouble. Yet Islam is stating that you can even marry them if you want to, even if they're as young as 9 or 10 or 11 or 12.
I mean, when we read the verse yet, it just says they haven't reached puberty yet. Theoretically, I suppose it could happen even at a year. I don't know. I mean, there's no lower limit set in this verse. But no matter, even if it's, say, 6 or 9 years old, this to me is appalling.
And what appalling...
And on equality, how could a 6-year-old Aisha be equal to any adult male?
Absolutely. And you know what is so appalling to me is the fact that if this is a standard, then how come we don't see it all the time? I mean, do you know that if a man in his 50s will go right now to any Islamic family and propose to marry their daughter who is 18, not even 9, they're going to laugh at him. I mean, it will be absolutely a laughable proposal because it's culturally just not acceptable. I mean, the age difference is just something that is astonishing sometimes. Does it happen? Of course it happens from time to time, but is it something that happens every day? Is it something that is a standard? No. So that makes you wonder then, if the Prophet did it, then how come everybody else, when it comes to this area, is not willing to follow his footsteps? For obvious reasons, that this is something that is completely weird and awkward.
Well, when you think about it, aside from some sort of what I will think of as strange sexual ideas, what would you want to have a wife for who's not even reached puberty yet? I mean, inequality between a man and a woman. Here you have a man who's 50, a girl who's 9. What do they have to talk about?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about a very, very sensitive issue right now, found in chapter 65 of the Quran, verse 4. This particular passage is so troubling that oftentimes commentators on the Quran, classical Muslim commentators, try to soften the blow by at least trying to harmonize its meaning. However, most of them are honest enough to indicate that this verse talks about specific categories of men that have to wait to get remarried, including women who have yet to reach the age of puberty. I mean, as a matter of fact, Bill, we're talking about remarriage, which means that they were married before. And that's even more troubling to me when you think about this.
Another thought I had when we were talking about, I remember there's a hadith, a tradition, that Aisha was allowed to bring her dolls into the harem.
Exactly, exactly. And that the Prophet of Islam would allow her some time to play with her doll, and he would play with her like a father would play with his child. That's his wife.
Yes, yes.
Well, we have on the screen right now some statistics that Bill have developed for us. Bill, would you like to tell us the meaning of this one, which says the statistics of women in the Quran, for instance?
I'm a scientist. Love math, I love statistics, I love facts. And what I have done is that I've gone through the Quran and I've taken out every single verse, which basically means every sentence that in any way relates to women. So we'll have, if you will, and I divided, once you've extracted all of these verses that relate to women, I then put them in 4 piles. Sometimes there's a mention of a woman, and it has nothing to, it's almost in a passing way. It doesn't have anything about her status, all right?
Just women in general.
Just women in general. But then I put it in 3 other piles, where a woman has low status, equal status, and high status.
Give us an example of a low status, for instance.
Well, I think we've just been talking about some things.
So similar to what we covered.
Yeah, that to me is low status. When
what
you're
about
saying
the high status?
That is unique. In almost every case, it's the mother who is exalted as greatest among humanity. Only as a mother is she elevated in status.
And I want to really emphasize the fact that indeed, when you study the status of a woman as a mother in Islam, truly she has a special status. But You have to wait until you get to become a mother in hope that your status will become even better. But you know, culturally, when you look at this bill, I mean, you find this everywhere.
Yes.
Among Hispanic cultures,
Yes.
among European cultures. I mean, Asians, a mother is always, you know, treated this way.
Well, why not? I had a mother. I loved her. She took care of me. This is natural.
So Islam hasn't really brought anything new, basically.
No. I mean, honoring the mother, we should all honor mothers. Then we have equal status. Now,
Define equal, for instance. I mean, are they exactly equal?
Well, on Judgment Day, a man and a woman are judged equally.
So this is a futuristic thing.
Yes, in the future. On Judgment Day, they will be equal. But, as we Americans say, there's a catch-22, or read the fine print, because one of the things she will be judged on in her equality on Judgment Day is how well she obeyed her husband. And we know from a hadith that Muhammad said, I have seen hell, and the majority of its occupants are women. Why, Muhammad? Because they were not grateful to their husbands. So much for equality.
In fact, I want to add to what Bill just mentioned, that Muhammad's complaint about women says that if it wasn't for Eve, that men wouldn't have probably gotten in a lot of trouble that they keep getting in when it comes to lust after women. So he's blaming Eve for something like this, and he's also blaming Eve for the fact that the majority of women are indwelling hell, basically, which, if you read it the other way, what he's saying, men actually, majority of men will be in heaven, majority of women will be in hell. How does that make you feel as a Muslim woman, knowing that your prophet believes that you are the source of evil? In fact, we are going to deal with that topic pretty soon here after the break.
And by the way, that particular hadith, let me add before we break, also he went ahead to say, not only are most of them women in hell, but he also went ahead to say that they're less in intelligence and less in their religion.
Well, Bill, these are a lot of labels that definitely don't make anyone feel comfortable.
They don't make me feel comfortable.
Especially when we're talking about a status of a human being before anything else, that somehow, because her gender is different than another gender, all of a sudden now a religion called Islam gives itself the right to try to dictate where she falls on that scale.
Subjugate is the word.
Now, here is my challenge. I know some people will be upset right now in stating that, why am I picking on Islam? Well, we're not picking on Islam, as a matter of fact. I tell you that Islam dictated that we pick on it. If Islam didn't tell me that it is the final religion, if Islam says, you know, I'm just a religion, you know, you're free to do whatever you want, then I would analyze other religions and say, okay, you know, well, Islam is special, it's unique. If you want to follow it, that's your choice. But when you dictate your ideology on me, when you tell me that your Sharia law is the law that must be followed, when you tell me that you are commanded to be supreme over mankind, that your message is universal, that you have improved the status of women, and yet we look at statistics like this. In fact, if you would elaborate, it looks like 71% of the status of women is not that pretty at all.
No, not at all.
So much for equality.
And by the way, let it be said here, this, sometimes when you talk about Islam, someone will say, well, you've taken it out of context. Let us be clear. The context here is the entirety of the Qur'an.
And this is everything that deals with
everything,
women, basically.
Yes. So the context is the absolute wholeness of it. There's not an escape here.
Well, Bill, hold your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us so far in this very interesting show about a very sensitive topic that deals with women and their status in Islam. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue our discussions.